Hey, what's up, everybody? So I want to go over the Packers' first day of free agency. I already broke down all the moves yesterday in specific videos, but I wanted to give like my overarching thoughts on what the Packers did on this first day of free agency. Clearly, it's still early. There's still a lot of other guys still out there that are available. Not really any of the top tier type players. There are some out there, but all in all, the most wanted players have signed with lots of different teams. But I want to go through and give my overall assessment about what Brian Gutekunst and the Packers front office did on the first day of free agency. So first off, of course, Aaron Banks coming in, guard from the 49ers, 4 years, $77 million deal. And then the second move is Nate Hobbs at 4 years, $48 million. And I feel like getting ready for the Packers and free agency, I think that if you asked any Packers fans, who they wanted to bring in, I'm not sure many would say Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs. They're guys who are relatively unknown. I honestly didn't know too much about them before they got signed to Green Bay. I think there are a lot of other guys that would have been more exciting players. I think last year, if you look at that off-season last year, during free agency, day one with Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney was definitely a more exciting day. But I think at the end of it, Gutekunst did a few different things here that I think actually are moves that are going to allow this Packers team to fill up a few different holes that I think were needs that maybe necessarily weren't quite as big needs right away, like offensive line. Because I think if you look at the Packers offensive line going into 2025, there are enough players there to, I think, solidify and to be there as long as there weren't injuries. I do think, though, when you look at the game against the Eagles in the wild card round, when Elton Jenkins goes down, it was pretty rough with Kadeem Telfort coming in, Travis Glover, and they struggled in there a good amount in that game against the Eagles. And so Gutekunst, I think, now looking at the state of the rest of the NFL with some of these teams and their pass rushes, I mean, he wanted to solidify this offensive line and make sure that they don't get put in a spot in 2025 where if there is, one injury to Elton Jenkins, where the Packers will be put in a pretty bad spot. And so now with Aaron Banks in here, according to Tom Silverstein, the plan is to move Elton Jenkins to center, which he's had a little bit of experience playing there. And so now this offensive line, there are so many different ways this could look in 2025. And I think we all know how Brian Gutekunst likes versatility on the offensive line. And so with Banks likely playing at left guard, which is where he's played, pretty much his whole time with the 49ers, you can put Jenkins at center, and then that gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to the rest of your O-line because Banks left guard, Jenkins center, and then you have a few different options. You could do Sean Ryan at right guard. You could do Jordan Morgan at right guard. You could do Morgan potentially at left tackle. And in my mind, the best case scenario is that Jordan Morgan comes in these offseason workouts heading into training camp and is able to take over the left tackle spot just because when you look at after this next year, the offensive linemen who are going to be free agents, you have Rasheed Walker, you have Sean Ryan, and you have Zach Tom. I assume that before that happens, Zach Tom will get a big-time extension at tackle. But Rasheed Walker is going to be a free agent next year, so is Sean Ryan. And so I think just based on cost, considering tackles make way more than guards and centers, it would be better if you don't have to pay Rasheed Walker. And while Rasheed Walker, I think, was he's a pretty good tackle, I don't think he's a top-tier tackle that you're necessarily 100% going to keep. Because out of 31 different tackles who played 1,000 snaps last season, according to PFF, he was 18th in pressures allowed, 25th in hurries allowed, tied for 9th best in sacks allowed, tied for 13th in hits allowed. So he's fine if you need him at left tackle, but I don't think that he's necessarily your long-term option. And so best case scenario is that Jordan Morgan can win the left tackle job. And so with Jenkins going to center, with Banks being at left guard, there are a lot of different possibilities here. And just when you look at 2026, you just have a lot more certainty about, having enough guys there on the O-line where if you're Gutekunst and you don't make any kind of move at, offensive line this year, you go into 2026 with the different guys who are going to be free agents that year, you go in a little bit concerned. So I think at the end of the day, you want to protect Jordan Love. You want to always make sure that he has enough protection around him because especially with some of these top teams in the NFC like the Eagles, whose pass rushers are so dominant. You can never go wrong picking up offensive linemen. So at the end of the day, I didn't expect the Aaron Banks move, but I'm completely fine with Aaron Banks coming in and being the Packers guard. And the Packers are really good, I would say, typically evaluators of offensive line talent, and they're really good at getting guys later in the draft who play well, like Rasheed Walker being a 7th rounder, Zach Tom being a 4th rounder. And so my guess is the Packers, did their due diligence here with Aaron Banks. And I saw some clips of him run blocking, and he's 6'5", he's pretty massive, but he can move a lot as well. So I like the move. It gives me confidence in protecting Jordan Love in the future, which is something that clearly the Packers will need to really focus on. And then looking at Nate Hobbs, this is one where you're not spending a ton of money relative to, cornerbacks. He wasn't one of the guys, that was one of those top options where you're going to have to spend, more than they had to pay Nate Hobbs. 4 years, $48 million, only $16 million guaranteed, which is 24th among cornerbacks. And I think with Nate Hobbs, there are some pros and cons. I think that the cons are that he hasn't stayed healthy. He has played in the past 3 seasons. He's played in 11 games, 13 games, 11 games. One pro is he's only 25 years old currently. So even though he has been with the Raiders, for 4 years, he's only 25 years old. So if this works out, this is a move that could really pay off in the next 3 to 4 seasons. So in the best case scenario here, you get a really solid player who maybe, didn't play his best football with the Raiders, and he comes to Green Bay into Jeff Hafley's scheme, and if he can really pick things up and stay healthy, this could be a steal potentially. There are, though, when you look, though, at one concern, last year he was not a great tackler, 22.4% missed tackle rate last season, which would rank around 140th in the NFL. But I was doing some more digging because I have heard people say that he's really good against the run. And when you look at that missed tackle rate, it makes you think, okay, how could that be if he's missing a ton of tackles? But according to PFF, when you look at run stop percentage, he was 13th in the NFL at cornerback and run stop percentage at 3.9%. And that is among guys who at least had 100 snaps. So he flies around and he's in the backfield a lot. And when you look at the Packers cornerbacks last year, the best cornerback on the Packers roster when it came to stop percentage was Keyshawn Nixon at 1.8%. So Nate Hobbs at 3.9%, nearly double the Packers' best guy when it comes to run stop percentage at cornerback. So if you turn on some of his highlights, you can see how athletic he is. He flies around. He looks physical. I like his sort of play style. And so clearly you don't want him to miss a ton of tackles, but I think part of it could be that he's just always in the backfield and diving at running backs. Sometimes he misses, but he's always around the ball, it seems. And one interesting thing regarding Nate Hobbs, which I shared yesterday from Ryan Wood, is that the expectation is for Hobbs to play perimeter cornerback. And so initially when you look at the signing, you see his slot snaps, which was around 1,600 or 1,700 snaps from the slot, maybe 600 or 700 on the outside. So first thought, it's like, okay, maybe he's a slot corner. But then you have, Javon Bullard, who is a 2nd-round pick, who I would expect the Packers want to keep trying out at slot. And so it makes a lot of sense that the plan is to put him at outside corner. My question is he a better coverage corner than Carrington Valentine? I do like Carrington Valentine a lot. And looking at some more stats here, according to PFF, Nate Hobbs has about 102 passer rating allowed during his career. You compare that to Carrington Valentine at 82. And so I think there is some debate there that potentially, I think Carrington could be better in coverage than Hobbs. I think we'll have to wait and see how things go in training camp. But it does make me wonder, who's going to win the 2 outside corner jobs if Jair is gone. Because right now, I think with Hobbs coming in, the Packers have definitely set themselves up to where they don't have to keep Jair. It's already looking pretty uncertain when it comes to his future. We still don't know. He's still in the Packers currently. So even though it looks like he'll probably be gone, he's still on the team as of right now. So I'm just curious when it comes to the outside corner, if Hobbs does play out there, is he going to beat out Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon? I think the expectation would be he does, because you're paying him, $12 million a year. And I think that when you pay someone that and he's 24th in guaranteed money, you expect him to start. You're not paying him $12 million a year to sit on the bench. And so that's where it's going to be interesting to watch to see what happens, because let's say that we come to training camp and they're competing at cornerback. The good thing is that he can play slot corner. He can play outside corner. The good thing is Keyshawn can play slot, can play outside. There's a lot of versatility here, and so I think that we'll really get a clear idea when it comes to training camp, where Hobbs fits best, but the expectation is he plays outside. I also saw from Bill Huber. Let me pull up the quote right here because this was also interesting. Let me try to find this tweet real quickly, or this part here. So this is an article from Bill Huber. He said, I'll start off here. Hobbs played primarily in the slot as a rookie in 2021 as well as in 2023 and 2024. In 2022, he was mostly a perimeter cornerback. The Packers will put that versatility to use. According to a source, one option would be Hobbs playing cornerback in the base defense and moving into the slot on passing downs. His position could be matchup based, whether it's covering a specific receiver or being closer to the line of scrimmage against strong running games. So there from Bill Huber, one source saying he could play the outside corner in base defense and then move to the slot in passing down. So I think that you like the versatility that you get from Hobbs, and so that's something where I would assume he beats out Carrington Valentine, even though I think Valentine, looking at some stats, has been better than Hobbs, at least in passer rating allowed, which isn't everything, but it's something. So that'll be something to watch as we move forward, who the starting corners are. Could it be Hobbs outside and Keyshawn outside with Bullard in the slot? Could it be Valentine on the outside, Nix on the outside, Hobbs in the slot? I mean, there's just a lot of potential things to watch out for. So all in all, I think that when you look at these overall players, and I'll get to the donation in 1 second. Thanks for the donation. Let me finish this and I'll get to that. But I think all in all, just to give my overall grade, I'm giving it a solid B. I'm giving it a B because I think that both of these guys are going to help the Packers, no doubt. They needed more depth at cornerback. They needed to bolster the offensive line, even though I didn't see it happening like this in free agency. So I think they're solid moves. They're not necessarily exciting. They're not ones where I'm like, okay, man, Super Bowl, here we come. But they're moves that I think are, necessary when it comes to the future of the offensive line. You needed some more depth at corner. And so I like the upside of Hobbs. I think that he has a chance to be really good. He's a really athletic, fun player to watch. And Banks is going to make this Packers offensive line really, really solid. So those are my thoughts there on the overall grade. Now let me get to the donation. We have from Whalers860. Appreciate the donation. He says, Watson is a bust. His potential excuse is done. Christian Watson, I wouldn't consider Christian Watson a bust. Unfortunately, he has dealt with a lot of injuries. He, of course, with this ACL, it's very unfortunate. I think that he was starting to get things together a lot more at the end of last season. But if you take away the injuries, which obviously is a big part, very unfortunate. But yeah, I don't think he's a bust. We'll see what happens, though, going forward. Let me take a look at some of these comments now that I got through my overall thoughts there. So Snowboarding for Life says a C grade for sure. Why would you give it a C? I think it's better than a C. I was going between B and B+. I decided to go with B because I think there are some concerns with Hobbs in my mind just when it comes to his missed tackles, but at the same time, there's a lot to like as well. There are some concerns about his injury history. Not quite as bad as Jair, but he's played 11 games, 13 games, 11 games. He's missed a lot. So there is some risk there with Hobbs, but if he stays healthy, he could be really solid. Trill Bill says B, B-. Okay, so similar, close to my thoughts there. Martin911 says, I don't trust the injuries to the new signings. Yeah, just as I said with Hobbs there are some concerns with Hobbs. Aaron Banks, let me pull up some of his history here real quickly. Banks has been relatively healthy. Last year, 13 games, so he missed 4. Not great, but it's fine. Year before, 15 games. Year before, 16. So for the most part, he's only missed, 5, 6 or so games in 3 seasons. I think he's relatively healthy. I don't think there's too much of a concern there with Aaron Banks. And I think if there was, I don't think the Packers would have paid him, close to $19-ish million per year. So I'm not too concerned with the injuries for Aaron Banks. Nolan asks, what does cap space look like so far? Yeah, let me pull up the Packers' current cap space. The numbers have come out for the Nate Hobbs contract, but they haven't come out. They may have come out by now. I actually haven't checked in the past hour or two, but earlier this morning, the numbers had not come out for the Banks contract. They may have come out by now. According to Over the Cap right now, I'm not sure if they have all of the updates here. I'm trying to see if they have Hobbs in here. I'm not currently seeing Aaron Banks added here. So currently, without Banks, the Packers have $37.7 million in cap space currently. That will definitely go down once Banks is added here. I just don't think his contract has come out yet. But for Hobbs, he is a $5.9 million cap hit in 2025. So not too bad for Hobbs at a $5.9 million cap hit. And just as the Packers do with lots of contracts, this is one where you could technically get out and not have too much of a problem after 2 years. If you were to move on from him after 1 year, he'd have a $12 million dead cap hit. Not great. After 2 years, $8 million dead cap hit. So not to say he's not going to work out, but I think anytime you sign a player, just sort of looking at the structure of the contract, because just the overall numbers sometimes doesn't give you the full picture. A lot of it has to do with guaranteed money, which Hobbs gets $16 million guaranteed. Martin says Banks' stats dropped when the guy next to him got injured. What do those stats look like? Esther Noble says we got our army of doctors to figure it out. Soldier says $12 million a year for Hobbs is a ridiculous, terrible signing. You think it's a terrible signing? I don't think it's a terrible signing. I'm fine with it. I'm not like over the moon with it. I think that there's a lot of upside there. Watching him play, I mean, he flies around to the ball. He, even though he had a lot of missed tackles, really good against the run. He had the 13th highest run stop percentage in the NFL among cornerbacks last season. So there's a lot to like. I'm not like, it's not a home run of a signing. It could be eventually. Right now in the moment, I don't feel that way. But there's a chance that, if he stays healthy, that it could be a value for the Packers at $12 million. Because you're not always going to sign the guy where you pay him, $20, $25 million, and you're like very certain that they're going to be, complete player when you bring him in. When you sign a guy who ends up getting 24th in cornerback guaranteed money, you're not expecting him to be a perfect, type prospect. But there's a lot of things to like. Soldier says, Luke, what do you think about Slayton gone? Does that mean we need early defensive tackle, lineman, and draft? Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't like the Packers moving on from TJ Slayton just because he was probably the Packers' best defensive lineman against the run. Last year, according to ESPN, he had the highest what's the stat? The highest, I think it's run stop win rate. I'm mixing it up right now with run stop percentage that I was just talking about. Yeah, run stop win rate. He was the best defensive tackle when it came to run stop win rate in the NFL in 2024. So the Bengals got him for, I think, 2 years, $15 million. I think the Packers should have brought him back at that number. He did play like 39% of snaps, so clearly he's not out there a ton. That's probably why they moved on, just because they didn't want to pay him that money, I guess, because he's more of a one-dimensional type player. And so when you're only playing him 39% of the time, I see why you would. I really like TJ Slayton. He was really a big part of the run defense. So no doubt the Packers really need to load up on the defensive line, especially because at this point they have not signed any edge rushers. They have not added any other defensive linemen. They've just made these two moves. So I expect them to go heavy in the draft on the defensive line. And I assume we'll see some more free agent signings come out. I don't know if it's today, tomorrow, in the next couple weeks, as some of these other guys, as things cool down, the Packers should get some values out there. You never know, too. A couple of years ago, the Packers get Devondre Campbell in, I think it was at June or July, for like $2 million. He ends up being an All-Pro that year. So you never know. I think the Packers will definitely add edge and defensive tackle. They definitely need to desperately at this point. Nolan says, I think Banks will give Love more time and help in the run game for the offense. Hopefully, less sputtering out this season. Yeah, the Packers' run blocking wasn't the best last year. It was like 23rd when you look at run block win rate, so not great there. I think they're 7th in pass block win rate. So pretty solid against the pass, not quite as good against the run. And I was watching some clips of Banks, and he looks like a pretty solid run blocker in my mind. I assume the Packers would not pay him $77 million, or at least that's the total deal, if they didn't think he could do everything and be the solid left guard there with Jenkins moving to center. Esther Noble says, if Slayton was a free agent and wanted to go, his choice. I assume he would have stayed if, well, I guess I don't know for a fact. He could have stayed if the Packers gave him more, unless he felt like he was going to get more playing time in Cincinnati. That could be a factor as well. Nolan says Zach Tom can play center too. Yes, he can. He definitely can. I thought that was a possibility, maybe, and then I saw the report from Tom Silverstein that said the Packers plan to put Jenkins at center, so I assume Zach Tom will stay at right tackle. I mean, I was looking at one quote from Gutekunst. I can't remember when this was from, but he said that he thinks Tom can play both tackle spots. I assume he'd stay at right tackle because he's been really good there and he's comfortable there. But is there a chance they would try him at left tackle? I don't know, because then you'd have to move either Rasheed Walker to right tackle or Jordan Morgan. I assume Tom stays at right tackle. The Packers pay him a ton of money. But I really do hope that Jordan Morgan can win the left tackle job, because that would be great for the next 3 seasons if he wins that job, to be able to, pay him, not have to pay him a lot of money. Because if you have to pay Rasheed Walker next year, he's going to cost a lot of money. Not because I think he's a top tier offensive tackle, but just because the offensive line market is pretty. I mean, it's pretty expensive to pay a starting quality tackle. So I think best case is the Packers can pay, or can have Jordan Morgan at left tackle. Poise says, we choose mid, we buy cheap, so we stay mid. I don't know if we really were cheap this year. If you look at free agent spending so far, at least earlier this morning when I saw the numbers, the Packers had the sixth most money spent in free agency this year so far. So they spent a lot of money. It's just because I think it's on guys that aren't as well known. I mean, I didn't really know much at all about Banks or Nate Hobbs. But it's not quite as exciting as last year because of the names of the guys, like Josh Jacobs. We get him for like $12 million a year last year, whatever the number was. Forgetting the exact number right now. But imagine that, Banks is making more than Josh Jacobs, which just shows, the running back market's still pretty undervalued compared to offensive line, which is sort of interesting there. But I do think with the offensive line, one thing last year, the run blocking wasn't great. Josh Jacobs, I mean, he had I think close to 80% of his yards rushing were after contact. So hopefully Banks can make this unit better when it comes to run blocking, give him some more open lanes. Ronald says Hobbs is no better than Alexander as far as playing a full season. Also, his stats are that impressive. I just wish Goody would start to get active in this free agency. I mean, he's been active. He's made two moves. I mean, not as active as the Patriots, but they had so much money because their players haven't been good, so they're not re-signing their own players. They have to go find other teams' players. So that's the good thing, when you have a ton of cap space is, you can go sign a ton of players. The bad thing is you don't have a lot of good players on your roster, because if you did, you wouldn't have much cap space to spend. But I do think that Alexander's definitely better than Hobbs, no doubt. The question is with the health. Because if Jair was perfectly healthy, I don't think the Packers sign Nate Hobbs. I don't think Jair would be moving on if he was fully healthy. Now, I assume he goes. We still don't know for a fact that he'll be gone. Robert says playoffs does not equal mid. True. Packers are definitely not mid. They need to be better in the playoffs, no doubt. But I like what they've done so far. Edward says, do you think we should cheap Jair? You mean cut Jair? Oh, keep. Okay, my bad. Okay, I see. Should we keep Jair and let go of Stokes instead? I sort of feel like the Packers will let go of Stokes. I think he'll sign with another team. I feel like Jair and Stokes will be gone most likely. What is a reasonable trade for Jair? Well, a lot of NFL executives, there was one report, forgot who it was from. Maybe it was Jordan Schultz. I can't remember who it was from. But there was one report where a lot of executives expect Jair to end up being released. And so that could be what happens here. We haven't seen a trade with Jair so far. So I'm not sure there's even going to be a trade. Appreciate it, Gerardo, however you pronounce it. We need an edge rusher, no doubt. We need an edge rusher. We need to bolster the defensive line, no doubt, with TJ Slayton gone. No doubt about that. Knowledge X the problem. What's your thoughts on our pick at 23? Do you think we trade up or swap picks? Yeah, that's a good video idea soon for me, so thanks for that idea. But I think now when you look at this, so signing an offensive lineman, definitely less of a need in the draft. I think they'll still draft offensive linemen. And then adding a corner, I doubt, they probably wouldn't draft a corner round one. I guess I still could. I'm not sure. I think they need to go edge rusher round 1 now. Defensive line round 1, no doubt in my mind. If not round 1, round 2, because TJ Slayton gone, you lose a great run defender. The pass rush wasn't great last year. So, yeah, Edwards says we need Hendrickson. Yeah, he's still out there. Now that's the kind of move where if that happens, I'm, giving the Packers offseason grade like an A+. Obviously, you'd have to spend, maybe not A+, but that's the kind of move I want to see. I'm not sure if we'll see it. We haven't seen a kind of move like that in day 1. But yeah, I agree. Hendrickson would be awesome. Chase says, what should we make of Goody not even calling on DK or Devontae? Yeah, I saw something about that. I need to look into that more. But I think it just sort of shows that even this year where it felt like maybe with the Christian Watson injury, the Packers could be more aggressive at receiver, they continue to do what they always do, or what Gutekunst always does, which is not spend a lot of money on receivers, outside of the team, like free agents. Because the past, it's been Devin Funchess, Sammy Watkins in the late stages of his career, Randall Cobb. So when you look back at those quotes of Gutekunst saying, teams that have a lot of the targets, a high percentage of targets going to their top weapons don't typically fare well necessarily and go super far, paraphrasing. I guess that's probably where his mind is, and he probably didn't want to come in and add someone like that. So I would like to see DK or Devontae, no doubt. I think that would have been awesome. Not the end of the world, in my opinion. And Gutekunst is just going to continue following this trajectory, it seems, at the wide receiver market. And every year we'll go, well, maybe it changes this year. Like, I thought this year it might change, but I feel like I've thought that a lot, and it doesn't really change. Am I that mad? No. It would have been exciting. Sometimes it's fun to get those exciting moves, like a Josh Jacobs signing, even though Aaron Jones was gone. But these moves are, like the Aaron Banks move is more of like, okay, yeah, we had to do it. Is it exciting? Sort of. When I saw the move, was I like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this? No, I was like, oh, Aaron Banks, I don't really know much about this guy. Do I know who he is? Let me look into him. That was more my feel. Robert says if they're cutting job, makes the most sense to do it post June 1st. I'm pretty sure you can designate it like as post June 1st. So they could technically release him. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Knowledge X the problem says, do you think we move up in the draft and use Jair's collateral? I guess anything is possible. Gutekunst has moved around a lot in the draft, not necessarily like huge jumps, but he'll move up here and there if he feels the need, like with Jordan Love, which I think worked well. Paladin Page, I appreciate the donation. Thanks very much. Are we going to trade for George Pickens and or Trey Hendrickson? I hadn't even thought of George Pickens. I doubt we trade for George Pickens. I do think the combination there with George Pickens and DK Metcalf is pretty interesting. They're very similar type receivers. And I saw a lot of edits of, because they're both sort of aggressive and physical and throw guys down. And so it's a funny pairing over there in Pittsburgh where Aaron Rodgers may be. But I don't see Pickens leaving the Steelers unless I miss some kind of news about that. But I would like them to trade for Trey Hendrickson. I would not be opposed. Let's send our first round pick right now and pay Trey Hendrickson $30 to $35 million a year for 3 years. I'm 100% on board for aggressively pursuing Trey Hendrickson because the Packers desperately need to bolster their edge rushing room, their edge rushers, and Trey Hendrickson would. I mean, he's been the best pass rusher at least the last year in sacks, 17.5 in back-to-back years. I would be ecstatic if they traded a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. We'll see what happens, though. I don't know if Goody's going to do it. If he doesn't, oh well. They better draft an edge rusher early, though. M. Carr says, Justin, the Packers are signing Jeff Janis, 3-year, $40 million. I loved Jeff Janis back in the day. He had those moments of fame. Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, I don't know what Jeff Janis is up to these days. Soldier says, Luke, what is the chance we draft another RB high since Lloyd was out and we don't know how he will turn out? I think there's a very low chance of them drafting a running back high. I would be surprised if they draft a running back in the first 4 rounds because they're already bringing, Marshawn Lloyd, 3rd round pick. Hopefully he's healthy. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. Josh Jacobs still here. Obviously great. Emmanuel Wilson back. They don't even need to draft a running back at all, in my opinion. I would rather them probably not, honestly. Sean says we need a big-time pass rusher, no doubt. No doubt. Michael Petru says, if I would be good, I would, if Rodgers doesn't end up with the Steelers, trade Malik Willis for Pickens to compensate the deep speed. We do not even know if Watson's going to be there long term. I don't know. Pickens is a good receiver, but I don't think they need to trade Malik for him. I like Malik Willis a lot. They could. If you got Malik for Pickens, because he's a backup, maybe it's worth that. But I like Malik Willis a lot. It would be awesome to keep him as our backup, but he does have 1 year left on his deal, so we'll see what happens there. Michael says, and next thing is Seahawks are going to pick 2 picks ahead into the 2nd round and also needing a receiver. Yeah, I doubt the Packers draft a round 1 wide receiver. I doubt it. Anything is possible, but I doubt it. Samuel says, I wish we could keep Jaw. I doubt it, sadly. Deep Blue says, keeping Jaw is too big a gamble, in my opinion. Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting if, after this whole offseason, what's gone down, that Jair ends up staying in Green Bay? They'd have to rework his deal. His cap hit is, I'm pretty sure it's the highest cap hit among cornerbacks in the league. I'm pretty sure I saw that information. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure. But I doubt he stays. Big Brento says sign AJ Dillon 2 year, $12 million. Yeah, I saw the report that AJ is healthy and ready to come back, which is awesome for him. I assume some other team will pick him up. I just don't see the Packers doing it. They have too many running backs, or they have a lot of good running backs. Esther Noble says DeAndre Hopkins still floating around out there. Yeah, there's a lot of older receivers out there still, like Stephon Diggs. If I missed a signing, let me know, because stuff happens fast these days, these free agency days. But I'm pretty sure Stephon Diggs is out there, Keenan Allen. Not that I think those are home run signings, but guys who are out there. DeAndre Hopkins, MVS. MVS is still a good deep threat. The Angry Casual fan says, Bill Huber is calling these signings massive overpays. I really love Bill Huber's stuff on Sports Illustrated. He's a great writer. Personally, I don't know if they're overpays. I think for Aaron Banks, I think he's the, 5th or 6th highest paid guard, I'm pretty sure now. I just think you can never go wrong spinning up on offensive line. And I honestly trust the Packers a lot. If they want to pay him $77 million, of course, you have to look at the guarantees, which I haven't seen them come out yet. I'm fine with that. He's allowed 2 sacks in 3 seasons. So I don't know if it's a massive overpay. With Hobbs, I think it's reasonable. I don't know if it's like a steal. It could be a steal. I think they're reasonable numbers, honestly. With the cap rising all the time, in a couple of years, you know, the deal for Banks, if he ends up working out, will look cheap in 2 years. When you look at all the other guys who end up getting signed in the next couple of years. Angry Casual says, get Hopkins, don't overthink it. It's Hopkins. I don't know. Jeremy says, you think we trade for Cup? Yeah, I haven't looked into Cup in the past few days, but weren't the Rams planning on... I think they were trying to trade him at first, and then they're going to release him, maybe. Need to look back into that after this video. Yeah, Jojo, I agree with you that I doubt we look for a running back because we got Jacobs, Emmanuel, Brooks, Lloyd. Yeah, I don't think we'll be adding any running backs. We got a lot of depth there with Lloyd. Emmanuel Wilson's a beast. J-Bomb says, Banks only guaranteed is the signing bonus. Yeah, has that whole contract been released yet? I still haven't seen it come out. The whole thing. William says, trade Malik after the draft for a 2026 second rounder to a team that misses on one. After the 2026 draft. Sorry, I misread that. Trade Malik after the draft for a 2026 second rounder. I don't know if he's worth a second round pick. I think he's really good, but I think a team would be there's just too much uncertainty. Just because he hasn't played a ton of games. I think he can be a really good NFL quarterback. He was insanely efficient and he was great on the Packers. I'm honestly curious what Malik Willis would look like in a full season with the Packers offense. I'm not saying he should be the starting quarterback, of course. But I'm curious. I almost have a feeling the Packers would still be good, honestly. JLSY says, on papers, it looks like they're overpaid, but if you dig into the details of the contracts, it's the guarantees that matters. Yeah, because with Hobbs, only 16 of the 48. I saw some say 50. I'm pretty sure the first report were 48. It's guaranteed. So I feel like with most Packers contracts, after a couple seasons, if things don't work out, you can sort of get out of the contract to an extent where it's not a massive dead cap hit. And that's sort of how it is with Hobbs. If after 2 years they release him, it's like an $8 million dead cap hit. So not nothing, but not terrible. Deep Blue says, Cup, Tay, Puka would be wild. Yeah, I doubt Cup stays with the Rams, but that would be insane if those were all those guys were there. William says, what would you think if Rodgers did end up in Pittsburgh or Minnesota? I mean, I would be sad if he ends up in Minnesota. I think the best case for Rodgers, just based on winning, is Minnesota because that offense is really good. I mean, you saw what Sam Darnold did last year with that offense. I mean, he played good football, but I would be concerned about the Vikings with Aaron Rodgers, honestly. With Justin Jefferson, I hope he goes to Pittsburgh. I think he makes sense there as well, and I'd seen some talk that maybe they were working on a contract. I saw someone say that. Jay Eat says Packers should sign Kyle Juszczyk. Yeah, he got released by the Niners. How old is he, though? That's my question. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching. I'm going to stop this now. If you want to hear my full grade breakdown on the first day, if you just tuned in, I touched on that maybe the first 15 minutes, so feel free. Go back to the beginning if you want to hear my whole discussion, my grade, all that stuff from the first day of free agency. I've just been answering questions for a while now, but stay tuned for more Packers content, more Packers news. We'll see if the Packers make any more moves the rest of the day. But thank you guys for tuning in as always, and I'll see you guys next time.